Hey everyone, so we got up to the part where we had managed to successfully add a click handler to our README buttons. And right now, however, all they do is produce a console log statement when they are clicked. And of course, we want them to actually show and hide information on that. So to do that, we are going to need to think about how we add classes and information to we need to figure out whether basically the more info is showing or not. And then if it's showing, we need to make it not showing, and if it's not showing, we need to make it showing, right? And we do this by adding and removing classes. So the first thing we need to do is we want to get a hold of the main quote container from the button that was clicked, right? So we have this E. We also know we have this. So I'm just going to call this container. And again, this is a jQuery thing. We can say this dot parent, right? Because again, this in this case is the read more div, right? It is the read more div that the user clicked. So its parent is quote container, and that's what we want to get a hold of. And then we want to write this conditional statement that says if, and again, we're going to say container. We could also make container a jQuery object itself, right? So we could wrap it in double things, but I find this clearer. So basically say if container has class, and we called ours expanded, right? So if it has this class called expanded, then, and I'm just going to put in pseudocode here, where or rather comment, just to say, like, basically, just so I remember what I'm trying to do. So if it already has the class expanded, that means it's open, so remove that class to close it, right? And otherwise, I'm going to do the other thing. It doesn't have expanded, so add it. Right? So this is how we're going to get our toggle feature. And basically, you know, now that we have the comments written in, so I find it much simpler to kind of think through the logic and literally articulate it in English in comments, and then go back and write the code, right? Because now I have a handle on what I'm doing and also why I'm doing it. If it has a class expanded, that means it's open, so remove the class to close it. So I'm going to say, you know, container dot remove class expanded, and down here it will be the opposite. It will be container dot add class expanded. Okay, pretty simple. So now we can see, you know, whether this is adding and removing the class, right? Again, we can just check our work here by doing an inspect element on one of these and looking for that kind of flashing, and mine is at the bottom here because that's, I don't know, I find it easier to see there. So I want to see elements, okay, and here they are. And so what I'm looking for is I want to see if, and I'm going to choose the top quote container, I want to see if that class changes when I click on this. And indeed, oops, oh no, looks like I've gotten it a little out of hand here. Oh, I ended up on data container, so I'm going to want to revise that. So the reason why we want to, so what happened actually in this case, and this is one of the distinctions between this and e.target, it's been a while, but now I remember, is that basically, so one of the things we've talked about, and I wish I had a visual for this, I don't really have a handy sketching pad here, but basically is that our read more button is inside our quote container, right? Which we can see in the structure of our markup here. So here's read more, there's quote container, right? And the question is, which is the thing that you're clicking on? Now, there is this thing where basically, even if you click on read more, that click is also, you can think of it as like a covered box, right? It's like quote container is like a glass box, right? And when you touch it, even if you touch in the area of README, right, you're actually clicking on quote container, clicking on that glass topped box. And so you can see the thing and you can target it specifically, but you will actually be touching the sort of surface, if you will, of that glass topped box. And so that's what's happening with the this.parent. This is one of the reasons I realize why I tend to use e.target, because e.target will always refer to the first thing, the sort of the inside thing that was clicked, rather than the glass, right? So it kind of like zooms through the glass and says, oh, you clicked on the area that was actually read more, not on quote container, even though that was sort of the surface that you touched. I realize that's a little confusing. We'll go over it in class for sure. But if I change this now to e.target, I can come back to my HTML page, and actually we'll see that I'm getting the correct thing that I'm looking for. Now, the truth is that it's really just a question of which one you want to do. You could do it the other way, right? And instead of having, this dot parent, you would just have this, and that would be fine. So you really just have to make a decision, right? Which way that you want to do it. As I said, my habit has been to use e.target, but it really just depends. It's sort of a style preference. So I'm going to leave mine like this, and actually because we had some classes in there, so I sort of glossed over this one. So that was actually not correct. That was an old version of the CSS. So right now, all it should be doing is, adding that. So it's adding that class, but we haven't described what that class is going to do. And so for that, we go back to the CSS, and we're going to use this fact that this sort of within selector, right? So basically you can think of this as like a find statement. It says, look, find the thing that has class expanded, and then find the thing within that has the class more info, right? And say display block, right? Which is our way of kind of making things visible. And what that means is that if both of these things are true, it will display block. And if only one of them is true, it might be a little bit easier to sort of see it this way, right? Now that we've written both. So basically, it's going to look first for the class expanded. We know that we are adding that to our quote container. So when it has that class expanded, it'll say, oh, okay, class expanded, and then it will say, okay, where's the thing that has class more info on it? Okay, display block. When we remove that class expanded, it's just going to have, this is the only one that will be relevant to this thing, and so it will be display none, and it will essentially hide itself. And so we can test this, coming back here, right? So we now have our functionality, which is nice. We always like that. Now we want to actually make it look like something. And so to do that, as I said, I'm cheating a little bit because I'm using the existing things that that the Guardian had. But we do see some, this is just to give you all a sense of sort of how you can look through this. So obviously some of the first stuff here, I can see that this red that they use, that's on both their read more and their read more and their 10 years clean, the sort of time frame thing, the years clean, is this particular red, right? So I'm going to go ahead and get this. And so you can copy these wholesale, but you can also just copy them sort of individually, right? Like what we're looking for is the sense of it here. And so instead of just having red, I'm going to replace that with, in my style CSS, I'm going to say, okay, I want this to be that. I believe that is also bold, right? The whole sort of inside part. So read more is this particular red, not just that one. We had, let's look back at this one. So they actually don't have bold on the title, but I can go through. So I have Danny, 10 years clean. So I can also add some content here. These things are sort of all aligned together. So but for us, they're in separate divs. So how do we do that? We can do that with, sorry, that was random, Control S. We can do that with the float position, right? So it's going to be our source, and I haven't even added classes for the others yet. So source, years clean, and location are all going to be bold. So years clean is going to be font weight bold, and location, whoops, location is also going to be right. So we're going to get closer now. These are in 3 separate divs, and the default is for them to be quote-unquote block aligned, which means that they stack vertically. What we want to do is we want to actually have them stack horizontally. So we're going to say display inline, and they actually are aligned to the right. And so I'm going to say float right. Now this is going to produce some unusual behavior to start probably, and it's a little bit counterintuitive how float works. But basically the first thing first is that this display inline is going to put them all on the same layer, if you will, or all on the same line as opposed to stacking vertically on top of each other. So I'm going to go back to mine here. And now I'm starting to get something that's a little bit closer, right? I've got, you know, Sydney, Australia, James. But you see what's happened is that the first thing in our markup, the sort of vertically top thing, is the name, is source, is the name, and then years clean, and then location. When we do that align, when we float right, what it means is it actually puts the first thing furthest to the right and then the next thing next to the right. So we have a couple of ways we can handle this. One way we can do it is just to rearrange the order of our divs. And which again is like a little counterintuitive, but this is, you know, just however, I mean, CSS, perhaps more than any other part of the development process, is really kind of trial and error and just like seeing what works. So in this case, I think I've rearranged them correctly. So now I have James, Sydney, Australia, 20 years clean, although actually that's the, oh, so other way. Okay. And it's okay if I have blank lines in between here. It actually doesn't matter. One more time, let's see how we do. Okay, so now I'm starting to get there. I can also, by the way, add punctuation. So you see that I have James, 26 years clean. So here it says Danny, 26 years clean, comma, Dublin, Ireland. So I can actually add that into my template part. I can say, okay, the source I want to have a comma, right? And then after, I want to have a colon, and then after this, the years clean, I want that to be a colon, and then after years clean, I want there to be a comma, right? So because it's in my template here, it's going to show up after the content of that variable, and it looks like I did color in the wrong place before. It's not the source, it is the years clean. It's going to be, and these can go, by the way, in any order. When you see them in the console, they're going to appear often in alphabetical order, I think, but it doesn't, they can be in any order within a particular CSS class. So here we go, and now I'm starting to get a little bit closer, right? I still don't have the right kind of font because I should have, well, it's just sort of a different serif font, right? But we're kind of getting down to it. So this is sort of the process. As I said, it's very trial and error. You can definitely, so when I look at this, it's saying font size 30 pixels. So again, one of the things that I can do for myself to kind of play around with this to make it easier is I can say, okay, well, here's my thing. I'm going to go ahead and I can actually use my arrow keys to up the font size here. Okay, so that's 30 pixels, and what else have they done? They've also done, there's no margin, float left. They've done a margin bottom on this and a text align left. So I'm going to take that bit of it. So you can kind of play around with this. And now when you add things here, right, and so you see how it crosses it out when it's gone, right? So I'm just going to sort of play around here. Now, if I close this page, you know, or I change something, it's not going to stick, right? So when I want to make it permanent and go on to sort of the next round of revision, then I can go ahead and copy that out, paste it into my CSS file, and it will be preserved for the next round. So that's essentially it. We want to see you match pretty well, but it's mostly just a trial and error process. So we'll see you next week.